The phone buzzed, shattering the familiar hum of my woodworking shop in Austin, Texas. I set down my planer, a symphony of wines and shavings, and saw the screen. Nathan Thorne. 2 words, a lifetime of silence and unresolved tension, stared back at me. I took a deep breath and flipped the phone open, my rough voice greeting him. Hello? His tone was clipped, distant, a mixture of obligation and disdain, announcing the death of Isabella, my ex-wife, and instructing me to appear at the will reading. The past 20 years of neglect, the silence, the absence of birthdays and Christmases, all crystallized into that moment. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit like, share, leave a comment about where you're listening from, and subscribe for more stories where the quietest people can hold the most power. The sound of the wood planer, the smell of sawdust and linseed oil, these were my companions. My hands, scarred and calloused from years of labor, understood truth and patience. I was not a failed architect. I was a man who built real things from raw materials, unlike the world I was about to face in New York. I inhaled, letting the scent ground me, and I knew I would attend the reading not to witness my own humiliation, but to confront a past shaped by arrogance, entitlement, and misunderstanding. My charcoal gray suit, pressed to sharpness yet old, would be my armor. The cab ride from LaGuardia into Manhattan was a passage through dimensions, streets alive with honking cars, towering skyscrapers replacing quiet streets, the air sharp with the scent of ambition and wealth. I arrived at Caldwell and Finch, a fortress of polished granite and glass that dominated the street, its imposing presence designed to remind visitors of their smallness. Entering, the lobby was cathedral-like, a deep, reverent hush replacing the city noise, floors of pristine marble reflecting every step. The receptionist, efficient and bored, registered my name but expected someone else. I was Mr. Harrison to them, not Nathan's father, an anomaly, a relic of a life discarded. Then he appeared, Nathan, walking with the arrogance of entitlement, flanked by Sophia, his thin, artificial beauty, and Kyle, predatory and polished. He did not acknowledge me, assuming his dominance would be uncontested, yet I held my ground. Memories of Christmas mornings flooded back, a handcrafted battleship ignored in favor of expensive games, a childhood shaped by indulgence rather than love. Nathan's confidence was a product of years of indulgence, his sense of superiority constructed like the polished lobby around us. I watched silently, my presence an unspoken challenge, a reminder that humility and patience have their own power. He tried to mock, to belittle, but I offered nothing. The room shifted when Mr. Harrison entered, tall, dignified, commanding attention with mere presence. He acknowledged me first, subtly undercutting Nathan's constructed authority. The waiting area and later the conference room were cold, imposing, each detail reinforcing hierarchy and control. I was seated near the door, hands resting on the unblemished mahogany, silent, prepared to observe, to endure, to witness a reckoning not only for Nathan, but for the years of quiet observation, patience, and resilience that had brought me here. Harrison's deliberate motions and unwavering voice controlled the room, preparing the space for the reading of Isabella Montoya Thorne's will, a document that would reflect values, reward integrity, and challenge entitlement. The moment stretched, anticipation thick in the air, as Nathan and his companions awaited validation of assumed dominance, unaware that the true legacy and authority of Isabella's estate would unfold with precision, challenging assumptions and reshaping the narrative in ways only the quiet and patient could appreciate. The city swallowed me as I stepped out of the cab, the streets alive with an energy so different from the serene quiet of Austin. The honking horns, the rushing pedestrians, the harsh smell of exhaust. Manhattan was a symphony of ambition and power, and I was a stranger to its rhythms. Caldwell and Finch's building rose before me, a monolith of polished stone and glass, its imposing presence designed to dominate and intimidate. Inside, the lobby was vast, cathedral-like, the floors gleaming marble, reflecting the grandeur and wealth of a world I had long been excluded from. My old charcoal gray suit felt like both armor and a symbol of past defeat, pressed sharp but outdated, its fabric softening with age but holding memories of courtroom losses and personal failures. As I approached the reception, I noted the receptionist's flicker of recognition when I gave my name. But her eyes held the expectation of someone more conventional, someone like Nathan. I was the anomaly, the ghost of a man who had been written out of his own story. Sitting in the waiting area, my hands rested on my lap, calloused from years of shaping wood, a tactile contrast to the smooth leather and polished surfaces surrounding me. I observed the abstract art on the walls, colorful shapes meant to signify taste and culture, but to me, they were empty displays, meaningless beyond their intended symbolism. Then they arrived, Nathan, with his entourage. He walked in with a swagger earned from privilege, dressed in a suit that fit perfectly, accentuating the physique of someone who had spent hours in a gym, not a workshop. Sophia, almost unreal in her beauty, and Kyle, teeth too white and a tan too perfect for October, flanked him like guardians of his self-importance. He barely acknowledged my presence, his eyes fixed on the world he thought he ruled. But the moment his gaze flicked to me, I felt the sharp sting of his judgment and the arrogance that came from years of unchallenged indulgence. Memories flashed. The Christmas morning when I had spent weeks crafting a battleship model, only for him to toss it aside in favor of a flashy new game console. I had learned early that love in his world was transactional, bought rather than earned. I sat quietly, offering nothing, letting the contrast between his constructed superiority and my steady composure speak louder than words could. The room's energy shifted when Mr. Harrison entered, tall and commanding without a word, his presence bending the space, drawing attention and authority naturally. He scanned the room, passing over Nathan and his companions as if they were furniture, until his eyes met mine, a subtle acknowledgement that I was not invisible, that I had a right to be here, a right Nathan had never considered. Nathan's demeanor faltered slightly, his carefully curated image of control challenged by a simple gaze and silent recognition. The conference room, where the will reading would unfold, was just as imposing. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished mahogany table, sterile light reflecting off every surface, designed to enforce power and intimidate. Nathan took his place at the head of the table, a king in his own mind, with Sophia and Kyle positioned like pieces on a chessboard, anticipating the distributions to come. I seated myself near the door, a passive participant in appearance but a silent observer in reality, my hands resting on the table, ready to witness, to endure, and to understand the unfolding drama. Harrison, ever deliberate, positioned the leather-bound will on the table with a quiet thud, each movement precise, measured, commanding respect and attention. He adjusted his chair, pulled out his simple gold-rimmed glasses, and prepared to deliver the voice of Isabella from beyond the grave. Nathan shifted impatiently, eager for affirmation of his assumed inheritance, yet unaware that the reading would challenge him in ways far beyond mere financial expectation. I remained silent, composed, a witness to the interplay of entitlement and authority, patience and impulsiveness, as the first words were about to be read, each a test of character and a reflection of true values, setting the stage for a revelation that would leave no one unmarked. The conference room was a stage, and every detail reinforced the gravity of the upcoming reading. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a glimpse not of the sky, but of the sterile, gray skyscraper opposite, as if the city itself conspired to underscore the seriousness of this gathering. The mahogany table, vast and dark, reflected the tension, the anticipation, and the wealth that had been accumulated through power, influence, and cunning. Nathan, seated at the head, exuded an air of entitlement, a man trained to expect that the world bends to his will. Sophia and Kyle flanked him, one a calculated display of beauty, the other a predatory force, each poised to witness the outcome of their leader's expectation. I sat near the entrance, understated, unassuming, but alert. My hands, scarred from decades of honest labor, rested on the table, a tactile reminder of real effort contrasted against this stage of privilege. Mr. Harrison stood near the head, his presence immediately commanding respect. Though silent, his authority was tangible, an unspoken force that shaped the room's dynamics. He adjusted the leather-bound will, placing it deliberately on the table, the soft thud echoing through the space, a herald of what was to come. He pulled out his simple, gold-rimmed glasses, the small details emphasizing precision, control, and meticulous attention. Harrison's voice, when he began, was measured, unwavering, projecting not just words, but the weight of authority and the embodiment of Isabella's final wishes. Each syllable seemed designed to command attention, to strip pretense, to highlight the contrast between entitlement and responsibility. Nathan shifted impatiently, unaware that his expectations of effortless inheritance would be challenged by methodical execution and deliberate nuance. His posture reflected control, yet his glances betrayed the tension beneath the polished surface. Sophia flicked her eyes up from her phone, curiosity mingling with anticipation, while Kyle's grin, predatory and calculated, softened only slightly under the subtle dominance of Harrison's presence. I, in my quiet corner, observed, noting each reaction, each adjustment, and each unspoken response. The room, though filled with wealth and ambition, seemed to contract around the authority Harrison embodied. Every gesture, every pause, every carefully measured word of his controlled the energy of the room. Nathan, though outwardly commanding, found his assumed dominance subtly undermined. The contrast between his constructed arrogance and the disciplined execution of the reading was stark. Memories of Christmas mornings, battleships meticulously crafted and ignored, contrasted with toys purchased for instant gratification, replayed in my mind. I was reminded of the man he had become, shaped by indulgence and expectation, not by character or effort. The will itself was more than a legal instrument. It was a narrative, a reflection of values, a structured assertion of judgment and reward. Each word carefully chosen, each bequest precisely directed, it served as a testament to Isabella's foresight, intelligence, and understanding of character. Harrison, through deliberate pacing and measured inflection, ensured that every person in the room understood the significance of the document. Nathan's impatience grew with every passing minute, yet each word, each gesture, reinforced the authority of the executor and the inescapable will of the deceased. I remained silent, observing, absorbing, and understanding that this was more than a distribution of wealth. It was a manifestation of judgment, legacy, and the subtle power of deliberate intention. The tension was palpable, each breath in the room measured, each glance charged with anticipation. It was a ballet of wealth, authority, and legacy, and I, the quiet observer, stood at the edge, ready to witness the culmination of years of careful observation and silent endurance. The reading of Isabella's will began in earnest, each word carefully articulated, resonating with authority and purpose. The first bequest named Maria Gonzalez, her housekeeper, receiving $50,000 in recognition of her decades of loyalty and patience. Nathan's eyes rolled, muttering something under his breath to Kyle, dismissing the gift as insignificant. Sophia's expression flickered with disbelief, the audacity of a wealthy matron leaving money to a servant Jared against their expectations. I felt a small, internal acknowledgement of the justice in that choice. Maria had endured far more than most would, her life intertwined with the household in quiet, meaningful ways. Harrison's voice continued, steady and unwavering, as he listed the donation of $100,000 to the Monarch Butterfly Preservation Fund, an organization Isabella had cherished. Nathan's impatience was palpable, a sharp contrast to the calm dignity Harrison exuded, while Sophia whispered incredulously, questioning the seriousness of the bequest. I remembered long ago excursions to Mexico, traveling miles into the mountains to witness the monarch butterfly sanctuaries. Isabella's tears had marked the significance of that experience, her reverence for the natural beauty and delicate patterns of life now immortalized in her estate. These bequests were not merely financial allocations. They were a reflection of values, deliberate and precise, each infused with meaning that Nathan and his companions struggled to comprehend. Next, Harrison read the bequest to Miguel Rodriguez, the driver, a modest sum of $25,000, a gesture of recognition and an inside joke acknowledging his tolerance of Nathan's ostentatious guests over the years. Nathan's frustration grew, tapping his fingers sharply against the polished wood, the sound reverberating in the silent room. Kyle's shark-like grin remained, but even he sensed the carefully laid challenge to their sense of entitlement. The reading moved on to Isabella's collection of first edition poetry, allocated to the New York Public Library, with the notable exception of a single copy of T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, directed in a particular way to carry symbolic significance. Harrison's measured pace and unbroken cadence ensured that every listener grasped the gravity of Isabella's intentions, the meticulous attention to legacy and principle that had guided her throughout life. Nathan, accustomed to immediate gratification and unquestioned entitlement, struggled to maintain composure, his posture stiffening, jaw tightening. Sophia and Kyle sat on edge, their anticipation now mingled with unease, realizing that wealth alone could not dictate respect or influence within this carefully orchestrated event. I remained poised, observing, letting each moment sink in, the weight of years and the subtle power of patience filling the space between the words. The will was unfolding not as a simple distribution of assets, but as a narrative, each clause carefully crafted to communicate lessons, uphold values, and reward integrity over privilege. Harrison's voice, unyielding, continued to command the room, each phrase reinforcing the authority of Isabella's final wishes, ensuring the document's weight was felt by all present. Nathan's sense of supremacy, built on indulgence and social leverage, confronted the unbending truth of deliberation and principled action. In that room, authority was measured not by appearance, money, or force, but by precision, foresight, and adherence to deeply held values. The narrative of the will, the bequests, and the subtleties embedded within them acted as instruments of revelation, reshaping the perceptions of all present, challenging arrogance, and honoring the overlooked. I felt a quiet satisfaction, the culmination of patience and observation giving context to the unfolding proceedings, validating the endurance of a life lived with integrity, and reminding those present that true authority lies not in wealth, but in wisdom, intentionality, and the subtle assertion of justice. The reading proceeded, and the weight of Isabella's careful planning became increasingly evident. Each bequest was a deliberate act, each clause infused with purpose, subtle instruction, and acknowledgement of character. Harrison's voice carried the words with precision, enunciating every sentence so that the room understood the gravity of the allocations. Nathan's initial confidence wavered, his impatience growing with each passing moment. He had expected immediate affirmation of his entitlement, a confirmation of wealth and power, but instead, he faced a meticulous unfolding of principles he had not considered. The next item, a sum allocated to support educational scholarships in Isabella's name, drew murmurs of disbelief from Nathan and Sophia. Kyle adjusted his posture, the smile still predatory, but the tension evident. These funds, though modest in Nathan's eyes, represented her desire to create lasting impact, rewarding effort, dedication, and integrity over privilege. I listened quietly, my attention keen, noting the subtle power embedded in each decision. Harrison continued with methodical steadiness, detailing the distribution of real estate, trust funds, and charitable contributions. Nathan's anticipation shifted into frustration as the estate's structure became apparent. Significant portions directed toward causes, trusted advisors, and loyal individuals, while he received only nominal allocations. Each announcement seemed to challenge the assumptions Nathan had built around wealth and inheritance, the air around him thick with a mix of anger, disbelief, and unease. Sophia's expression betrayed confusion. The world she understood, dictated by displays of beauty and influence, was colliding with deliberate foresight and the quiet assertion of justice. Kyle's calculated demeanor faltered, his expectations of reward and control undermined by the subtle authority of Harrison and the careful intentions of Isabella. The will revealed more than property or money. It communicated values, recognition of loyalty, and acknowledgement of those overlooked in the rush of ambition and privilege. Harrison's measured pauses allowed each word to resonate, emphasizing the significance of character over status, endurance over entitlement. I observed Nathan's reactions closely, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle fidgeting, the flashes of realization that his world, built on indulgence and unchallenged dominance, could be questioned and reframed by deliberate and principled decisions. I reflected on the memories long buried, Christmas mornings where meticulously crafted gifts were disregarded in favor of luxury and convenience, shaping the person Nathan became. Harrison's delivery, unwavering and authoritative, transformed the will into a narrative, a carefully orchestrated story of intention, recognition, and subtle correction. Every allocation, from charitable contributions to personal gifts, conveyed messages beyond wealth, teaching lessons of humility, patience, and the enduring impact of integrity. As each clause was read, the atmosphere in the room shifted, the anticipation of entitlement replaced with the weight of responsibility and the consequences of character. Nathan's companions, conditioned to expect immediate affirmation and reinforcement of status, now confronted the thoughtful structure of a life carefully planned, a legacy that valued contribution, loyalty, and foresight. I remained silent, absorbing the unfolding lessons, my presence a quiet acknowledgement of years of endurance, observation, and the subtle strength found in patience and integrity. The room, filled with polished surfaces and expensive accoutrements, now reflected more than wealth. It reflected justice, foresight, and the quiet assertion of values designed to endure beyond immediate recognition, leaving a lasting impression that would not easily be forgotten by those present. Harrison's voice carried through the room, deliberate and unwavering, as he continued the reading of Isabella's will, each word carefully measured to convey authority, intent, and subtle lessons. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation and quiet tension, Nathan shifting impatiently in his seat, fingers tapping lightly on the polished mahogany table. The will was more than a legal document. It was a testament to Isabella's insight, planning, and understanding of human character. Each bequest, each allocation, carried layered meaning, reflecting a life lived with foresight and principle. Harrison detailed donations to charitable organizations, ensuring that Isabella's legacy extended beyond her immediate family. These contributions, thoughtfully directed, spoke not only to generosity, but to a recognition of effort, dedication, and values often overlooked by those accustomed to privilege and indulgence. Nathan's reaction was visible, his arrogance met with a carefully orchestrated challenge, his expectation of unquestioned inheritance countered by deliberate planning and meticulous attention to detail. Sophia and Kyle, companions in wealth and influence, exchanged subtle glances, their understanding of control and entitlement shaken by the careful execution of Isabella's intentions. The reading progressed, Harrison now articulating allocations to loyal servants, friends, and organizations that had played meaningful roles in Isabella's life, each sum and bequest chosen to reward dedication and integrity. Nathan's impatience mounted, his posture rigid, as the clear delineation between his assumptions and reality became increasingly apparent. Each pause in Harrison's methodical reading emphasized the deliberate nature of the document, reinforcing the principles upon which Isabella had built her life and legacy. I sat quietly, observing every micro-expression, every subtle adjustment in demeanor, appreciating the intricate balance between authority, planning, and the message conveyed through tangible assets. Harrison's precise inflections, each calculated pause, conveyed not just words but meaning. That true wealth lies not solely in accumulation, but in the acknowledgement of service, loyalty, and enduring values. Nathan's world, shaped by indulgence and immediate gratification, confronted the reality that status alone did not dictate worth. Integrity and thoughtful consideration had their own commanding power. I reflected on the past, Christmas mornings of meticulous gifts discarded for ostentatious toys, and the subtle lessons embedded in those memories now echoed through the room, amplified by the structure and intent of the will. The energy in the room shifted, the anticipation of entitlement transforming into a recognition of principle. Sophia's demeanor, previously one of detached fascination, now mirrored the tension and uncertainty of Nathan, the carefully laid groundwork of Isabella's choices reshaping expectations and perceptions. Kyle's composed demeanor faltered subtly, his calculated confidence challenged by the deliberate authority Harrison embodied. Each clause read was more than a distribution of assets. It was a narrative, a structured revelation of values, a teaching tool of subtle but undeniable force. I remained a quiet observer, grounded in the principles of patience, endurance, and observation, witnessing the manifestation of foresight and intentionality. Harrison's methodical delivery ensured the impact was felt in every corner of the room. The subtle yet absolute assertion that wealth without wisdom and integrity was insufficient. Every bequest, every carefully measured phrase, reinforced the notion that true legacy is built upon deliberate action, thoughtful planning, and the recognition of meaningful relationships and service, leaving an indelible impression on Nathan, Sophia, Kyle, and all who bore witness to the unfolding of Isabella's thoughtfully constructed testament. The reading advanced further, Harrison's measured voice cutting through the tension, laying out the specifics of Isabella's careful planning. Nathan sat rigidly at the head of the table, each bequest challenging the assumptions of entitlement he had carried for years. Sophia and Kyle flanked him, expressions shifting subtly as they absorbed the implications of allocations designed with intention and foresight rather than immediate gratification. Harrison described distributions to charitable foundations, each contribution reflecting Isabella's values and long-term vision. Nathan's growing frustration was evident. His confidence, built on a lifetime of indulgence and expectation, met a reality constructed with precision and principle. The room's atmosphere thickened with silent recognition of the contrast between wealth and virtue, the transient influence of power versus the enduring nature of thoughtful judgment. Each clause of the will was deliberate, a careful balance of reward and instruction, honoring service and loyalty while ensuring that unearned assumptions were gently but firmly corrected. Harrison's steady inflection emphasized the weight of each word, the significance of timing, and the intention behind every allocation. I observed Nathan's reactions closely, noting the tightening of his jaw, the occasional flicker of uncertainty, and the subtle glances toward his companions for reassurance. Each movement in the room, each pause in the reading, reinforced the principle that inheritance and respect must align with character and contribution. Sophia's poised demeanor cracked slightly under the subtle authority of the document, while Kyle's confident mask faltered, sensing that careful strategy and patience had more power than wealth alone. Harrison moved seamlessly through bequests for personal associates and charitable projects, his methodical pace ensuring every listener absorbed the intended meaning. Each allocation conveyed lessons about responsibility, foresight, and the proper application of privilege. I remained seated, a silent presence, absorbing the lesson of patience and resilience, aware that this was more than a will reading. It was a carefully choreographed statement of values and intent. Nathan's sense of supremacy, cultivated over decades, was systematically challenged by the deliberate precision of Harrison's delivery, the clarity of Isabella's instructions, and the understated strength of enduring observation. Harrison's voice, authoritative yet calm, projected the weight of thought and purpose, turning financial distributions into a narrative of integrity, justice, and legacy. The subtle power embedded within each word reached beyond material considerations, addressing character, judgment, and the recognition of service. Nathan's companions, trained to expect immediate affirmation of status, now faced a structured reality that prioritized principle over privilege. Every bequest, every carefully constructed paragraph, communicated intention, reward, and subtle correction, challenging assumptions of unearned entitlement. As the reading progressed, the contrast between deliberate planning and impulsive expectation became increasingly clear, reshaping perceptions, recalibrating expectations, and underscoring the enduring impact of deliberate, principled action. I sat quietly, absorbing the unfolding narrative, reflecting on past lessons from a life built on patient effort, integrity, and observation. The room, once charged with anticipation and entitlement, now resonated with the subtle authority of intention, the weight of foresight, and the enduring influence of carefully considered decisions. Each clause reaffirmed the principle that true legacy is constructed not by wealth alone, but through thoughtful action, recognition of service, and the quiet assertion of values that endure beyond immediate gratification, leaving a lasting impression on all who bore witness to the meticulous unfolding of Isabella's testament. Harrison continued reading the will, his voice steady, resonant, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The room, tense and silent, hung on every word as the executor detailed the next series of bequests. Isabella's careful planning unfolded with precision, each allocation a subtle message, a lesson woven into the distribution of wealth and possessions. Nathan's posture grew increasingly rigid. His entitlement, cultivated over years of indulgence, now confronted a reality meticulously crafted to challenge his assumptions. Sophia's expression, once confident, now betrayed surprise and a growing unease as the deliberate pacing and substance of the will disrupted expectations of immediate gratification. Kyle, ever composed, shifted slightly, sensing the subtle undermining of anticipated authority and reward. Harrison detailed distributions to professional associates, longtime friends, and charitable organizations, highlighting loyalty, dedication, and service over privilege. Each clause carried significance beyond monetary value, emphasizing character, foresight, and enduring contribution. Nathan's impatience was evident. The tapping of his fingers on the mahogany table punctuated his frustration, the carefully orchestrated reading chipping away at the illusions of entitlement he had long held. The document became more than a list of bequests. It was a narrative, a measured exposition of principles, a deliberate correction of assumptions, and a subtle assertion of justice. I sat quietly, absorbing every detail, every pause, every deliberate emphasis Harrison made, aware that this was a carefully constructed lesson in values, integrity, and measured authority. Nathan's companions, conditioned to expect affirmation of dominance and access to wealth without question, now faced the challenge of understanding that influence was grounded in integrity and principle, not mere inheritance. Harrison's calm, precise delivery magnified the contrast between impulsive entitlement and deliberate consideration, demonstrating that true authority emerges from foresight, careful planning, and acknowledgement of service rather than ostentation and wealth alone. Each donation, each personal gift, each charitable bequest reinforced the message that thoughtful intention and observation define legacy, ensuring that Isabella's influence extended beyond her immediate circle to impact those who valued enduring principles. Sophia glanced toward Nathan, her subtle disbelief reflecting the growing realization that privilege alone could not guarantee respect or reward, while Kyle's carefully maintained composure faltered as he comprehended the calculated foresight embedded in the allocations. Nathan, his confidence shaken, wrestled with the reality that his expectations of dominance and immediate benefit were being systematically countered by thoughtful, principled execution. The will, articulated through Harrison's measured cadence, transformed into a story of justice, reflection, and recognition, a narrative in which character, diligence, and integrity held more weight than status or wealth. I remained an observer, quietly noting each interaction, each shift in demeanor, appreciating the balance of patience, endurance, and subtle assertion of authority at play. The room, once dominated by anticipation of entitlement, now resonated with the authority of intention, foresight, and enduring values. Each allocation, every nuanced clause, communicated lessons of responsibility, foresight, and recognition, reshaping the perceptions of Nathan, Sophia, and Kyle. The careful orchestration ensured that wealth alone was insufficient. Principle, planning, and integrity defined the true legacy left by Isabella, leaving a lasting impression on all who witnessed the methodical, deliberate unfolding of her testament. Harrison's voice continued to fill the conference room with deliberate authority, each word measured and precise, reinforcing the weight of Isabella's final intentions. Nathan sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, fingers tapping lightly on the polished mahogany, his impatience growing with every carefully articulated bequest. The allocations were far more than financial transactions. Each gift, donation, and distribution carried layered meaning, subtle instructions, and insights into character, loyalty, and foresight. Sophia and Kyle flanked Nathan, initially confident, now revealing small cracks of unease as the intentional sequencing of bequests challenged their assumptions. Harrison moved methodically through each clause, first highlighting contributions to charitable foundations Isabella had cherished, then allocations to personal associates and friends who had demonstrated dedication, service, and enduring integrity. Nathan's eyes darted from the page to his companions, frustrated by the deliberate pace and the implicit lessons in accountability and virtue. Each clause emphasized that wealth alone did not guarantee respect or recognition. Character and consistent effort defined true merit. Harrison's pauses, intentional and precise, allowed each message to resonate fully, ensuring that everyone in the room grasped the principle behind the distributions. I sat quietly, a silent observer, noting every microexpression, every subtle gesture, and every flicker of doubt that crossed the faces of Nathan and his entourage. The will, unfolding as a narrative of values and legacy, revealed Isabella's thoughtful foresight and her desire to ensure that her estate reflected enduring principles rather than mere entitlement. Nathan's impatience grew, his confidence undermined by the stark contrast between his expectation of immediate reward and the deliberate, measured structure of the reading. Sophia glanced toward him, realization dawning that influence and recognition were not dictated by status or wealth alone. Kyle's composed demeanor, so carefully maintained, wavered slightly, betraying his awareness of the subtle, yet undeniable authority Harrison wielded through each word. The allocations encompassed gifts for loyal household staff, educational funds for deserving individuals, and charitable donations to causes with lasting impact, each with clear intent and deliberate purpose. Every passage carried a lesson, a statement about the importance of foresight, diligence, and integrity, reinforcing that the value of inheritance extends beyond financial gain to the acknowledgement of service and character. I reflected on memories long buried. Christmas mornings when carefully crafted gifts were ignored in favor of extravagant toys, moments of quiet effort undervalued, lessons unrecognized. These recollections now resonated, their significance amplified by the careful design of Isabella's testament and Harrison's precise execution. The room's energy shifted. Anticipation of entitlement gave way to awareness of responsibility, principle, and the enduring influence of thoughtful action. Harrison's controlled tone underscored the legitimacy and seriousness of every allocation, ensuring that the instructions would be understood and respected by all present. Nathan's companions, conditioned to expect immediate affirmation of power and privilege, now faced the challenge of reconciling their expectations with deliberate, principled reality. I remained composed, absorbing the unfolding dynamics, appreciating the interplay of patience, authority, and strategic communication that elevated the reading from a simple legal procedure to a profound lesson in values and enduring legacy. Each sentence, carefully enunciated, reinforced the importance of integrity, foresight, and deliberate decision-making, leaving a lasting impression on Nathan, Sophia, Kyle, and myself, affirming that the true measure of wealth lies in intention, recognition, and the thoughtful application of resources over time, ensuring that Isabella's legacy would endure far beyond immediate perception and remain a testament to the power of deliberate, principled action and the quiet influence of careful observation. Harrison placed the final pages of Isabella's will on the mahogany table, the room falling into a hushed silence as he prepared to deliver the closing allocations. Nathan's eyes, once brimming with expectation, now reflected disbelief and tension. Each bequest had chipped away at his assumed dominance, illustrating the contrast between entitlement and the deliberate recognition of character, service, and foresight. Sophia's expression mirrored this revelation. The confidence she carried into the room replaced with an uneasy awareness that wealth alone did not guarantee influence or respect. Kyle, once predatory and composed, now adjusted subtly, sensing the depth of principle embedded in each decision. Harrison's measured voice, precise and deliberate, guided the room through the remaining allocations, balancing recognition of loyal service, support for enduring projects, and thoughtful gifts that reflected Isabella's values and insights. Each allocation was designed to underscore responsibility, highlight integrity, and reward foresight, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Nathan shifted, his posture rigid, yet his attempts at feigned composure could not hide the frustration building beneath. The careful sequencing and intentional nature of the will had transformed the room's energy. What began as an anticipated display of wealth and authority now evolved into a testament to enduring values and deliberate planning. I remained a quiet observer, my calloused hands resting on the polished surface, aware of the nuanced interplay of patience, authority, and strategy that Harrison executed. Each sentence, carefully enunciated, emphasized that inheritance extended beyond material wealth, reflecting character, loyalty, and measured foresight. The bequests to charitable organizations, educational initiatives, and long-standing associates revealed Isabella's intent to influence the future through principled action and enduring relationships. Nathan's sense of supremacy, built over decades, faced systematic challenge as each carefully articulated clause underscored that wealth without integrity or thoughtfulness lacked true impact. Sophia glanced toward him repeatedly, the implications settling as she realized that privilege alone did not dictate outcomes. Kyle's confidence wavered subtly under the weight of Harrison's precision and the clarity of Isabella's carefully crafted intentions. Every detail, from monetary gifts to symbolic acknowledgments, served as both reward and lesson, reflecting Isabella's nuanced understanding of human nature and the importance of foresight and prudence. I noted the subtle shifts in demeanor, the quiet acceptance of principle over expectation, and the recalibration of assumptions within the room. Harrison's voice remained steady, each pause deliberate, reinforcing the significance of each bequest and the overall message. True legacy is built upon careful planning, thoughtful action, and recognition of character rather than immediate gratification or entitlement. The room, once dominated by tension and expectation, now resonated with quiet acknowledgement of principle, authority, and foresight. As the final allocations were read, Nathan received a nominal sum, a symbolic gesture of inheritance, while the substantial estate had been thoughtfully directed toward loyal individuals and enduring causes. Sophia and Kyle absorbed the full impact, the careful orchestration of the will leaving no room for misinterpretation or dispute. I, the quiet observer, felt the weight of closure, the validation of patience and enduring effort, and the affirmation that Isabella's legacy had been meticulously executed. The room exhaled collectively, the lessons of integrity, foresight, and deliberate action having left an indelible mark on all present. In that moment, it was clear, the true measure of wealth lies not in immediate accumulation but in thoughtful, principled application, ensuring that legacy endures, values persist, and the quiet presence of patience and integrity is recognized long after the reading concluded. Nathan, Sophia, Kyle, and I each carried away the understanding that legacy, respect, and recognition are earned through integrity, foresight, and deliberate action, leaving a profound impression that would resonate well beyond the confines of Caldwell and Finch, ensuring Isabella's values endured as a testament to deliberate, principled life and legacy.